I confronted my cheating wife and asked her, "Do you love him?" Her face said it all. Before we begin our story, I'd like to ask you to please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support really motivates me to create more stories. Let's get started. Moreover, as you navigate this evolution, it's essential to remain grounded in your truth. In a world filled with noise and distractions, it's easy to lose sight of who you are and what you stand for. Regular practices such as meditation, journaling, or spending time in nature can help you reconnect with your inner self. These practices provide clarity and insight, allowing you to tap into the wisdom that resides within you. Remember, you are not just a passive observer in your life. You are an active participant, co-creating your reality with the universe. As you evolve, you may also begin to notice a heightened awareness of the interconnectedness of all beings. You understand that your actions have ripple effects that extend far beyond your immediate circle. This awareness fosters a sense of responsibility and compassion for others, inspiring you to contribute positively to the world around you. Whether through acts of kindness, volunteering, or sharing your knowledge, you can make a meaningful impact. Your evolution is not solely for your benefit. It serves a greater purpose, as you inspire and uplift others along the way. During this transformative journey, it's vital to practice self-compassion. There will be times when you may feel overwhelmed or doubt your abilities. In those moments, remind yourself of the strength that resides within you. You are not alone. Every chosen one has faced struggles and uncertainties. It's part of the human experience. Allow yourself the grace to feel what you feel, but don't allow it to define you. Acknowledge your feelings, but also remind yourself of your resilience and your capacity to rise above challenges. Your journey will also require you to embrace vulnerability. True power lies not in perfection but in authenticity. Allow yourself to be seen in your entirety, imperfections and all. When you embrace your vulnerability, you create space for genuine connections and deeper relationships. Others will resonate with your honesty and may feel inspired to share their own stories. This mutual sharing fosters a sense of community and support, reminding you that you are never alone on your path. As you continue to evolve, take time to celebrate your victories, both big and small. Each step forward is a testament to your strength and determination. Create rituals to honor your progress, whether it's through a simple acknowledgement in your journal, sharing your journey with a friend, or treating yourself to something special. Celebrating your achievements reinforces the positive changes you're making and serves as a reminder of your capabilities. "Kevin!" Emily cried, her hands flying to her mouth as shock rippled through her. Kevin set the bottle down and looked her in the eyes. "I thought maybe this would help you understand what it feels like to have something you've put time, love, and effort into be ruined without any thought," he said, his voice laced with an edge of pain. Emily stared at him, silent tears rolling down her cheeks, and watched as he took his coat and walked out of the house without looking back. On Sunday, while they raked leaves together, Emily finally broke the silence. "I've requested a transfer. I'll be moving to the internal advertising team next week." Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. Kevin stopped, looking at her as she stood there in her autumn sweater, her arms crossed as if to shield herself from his gaze. "Why should that matter to me?" he asked. She looked down, visibly hurt. "Because I won't be working near him anymore. That's all I wanted to tell you." He shook his head, resuming his raking. "You already told me it was over. Of course I trust you completely." His tone was dripping with sarcasm. Emily's hands clenched slightly. "Do you think sarcasm is helping?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. Kevin's tone turned sharp. "And do you think that moving offices will somehow fix everything? As if there aren't motels, lunch breaks, business trips, or countless other men who would jump at the chance?" he said, his anger surfacing for a moment. Emily's face fell as she tried to hold back tears. "Kevin," she whispered, "what else can I do? I'm trying, anything and everything to show you how much I regret this, to make things right somehow." He sighed, finally meeting her gaze. "And you think there's a quick fix? Some magic action that will wipe this all away?" You're living in a dream world, Emily. He turned away, his focus returning to the neatly stacked piles of leaves, leaving her there feeling utterly defeated. Later that night, Emily heard footsteps in the hall. Their daughter, Ava, appeared in the doorway, looking sleepily at her mother in the guest bed. "Mommy, why are you in here?" Ava asked with a hint of confusion. "I was working late, sweetheart," Emily replied, pulling her daughter into bed with her. "Now let's get some sleep." Within minutes, Ava was fast asleep beside her mother. Emily lay awake, stroking her daughter's hair, wondering how or if she could ever put her family back together again. Matt returned her smile, but with an almost imperceptible edge to it, as if it was strained. They were on vacation, the trip originally planned as a celebration of their 10th anniversary. Lynn had hoped that this getaway might rekindle something between them, a semblance of what they once had. She had tried everything in her power to make things right, yet no matter what she did, she felt like Matt remained just beyond her reach. The resort was beautiful, lush greenery and the turquoise sea stretching as far as the eye could see. A gentle breeze rustled the palm trees, and the distant laughter of other couples seemed to echo in their silence. Lynn looked down at her hand, resting on the table, and wished she could somehow bridge the gap that had grown between them. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said softly, almost timidly, testing the waters. "I know things have been hard." Matt picked up his drink, swirling it for a moment before taking a sip. His gaze drifted out toward the water, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "It's beautiful here. I guess it reminds me of better times." His voice was distant, like he was speaking to the waves rather than to her. The ache in Lynn's chest grew. She had expected this. His distance had become familiar, almost routine, but it didn't lessen the sting. She reached out, lightly touching his hand, and for a moment, he let her. It was the closest they had come to real intimacy in weeks. But just as quickly, he gently pulled his hand back and refocused on his drink. Lynn's heart sank. She knew he was still hurting. She could see it every time he looked at her. She understood that trust, once shattered, was almost impossible to piece back together. But every time she tried to discuss it, to address the issue, she found herself met with walls and silence. Matt's pain was deep, and she knew she was the one responsible. After a few moments of silence, Matt spoke, almost as if to himself. "Do you think this trip changes anything, Lynn?" Her breath hitched, and she could feel her eyes welling up. "I don't know," she whispered, barely audible. "But I hoped it might be a step. I hoped that we could find each other again." Matt nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. "Finding each other." He repeated the words with a hollow chuckle. "It's funny, because I don't even know who we are anymore, who I am when I'm with you." Lynn's eyes dropped to her lap, where her hands nervously clenched. "Matt, I know I made a horrible mistake. I know that nothing I do can erase that. But I want to try. I need to try. If we give up now, what about Beth and Jason? What do we tell them? That we couldn't work things out, that we didn't try." The mention of their children's names softened Matt's expression, but only slightly. He looked down, his fingers drumming the table, and sighed. "I don't want our kids to suffer. They deserve a stable home. But sometimes, Lynn, I wonder if staying together is actually better for them. Kids can sense things, they feel the tension." Her shoulders drooped, but she nodded. "I know. And I hate that we've brought that tension into their lives. But maybe there's still hope. If we can just work together, take it one day at a time." Matt looked back at her, his eyes weary. "Do you remember when we first met? How easy everything was back then? How we'd stay up all night talking about our dreams and plans? How we were so sure of each other?" A small, sad smile played on Lynn's lips. "Yes, I remember. I remember everything about those days." She reached for his hand again, desperation creeping into her voice. "We were happy, Matt. We can have that again." He pulled his hand away, his gaze hardened. "The difference is, back then, I trusted you completely. I don't think you realize what that trust meant to me. You were my safe place, Lynn. You were my everything." A tear escaped down Lynn's cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. "I know, Matt. I know that I destroyed that. And I know that every day you're reminded of it. But I swear, if I could take it back, I would do anything to change what happened." Matt stared at her for a long moment, and then, quietly, he said, "Maybe that's the problem, Lynn. It's not just about what happened. It's about the fact that I thought we had something unbreakable, something sacred, and you didn't." Silence fell between them, thick and heavy. Lynn tried to form words, but everything felt inadequate, like nothing she said could capture the depth of her regret or her love for him. She wanted to tell him that she had been foolish, that she hadn't realized the enormity of her actions until it was too late. But the words lodged in her throat, swallowed by her guilt. They finished dinner, mostly in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Lynn looked around at the other couples, some laughing and some whispering to each other, and she felt a pang of longing. Longing for the life she had thrown away, the love she had tarnished. As they walked back to their room, the sun was setting, casting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Lynn paused to take it in, her heart heavy. "It's beautiful," she said softly. Matt stopped beside her, looking out at the horizon. "Yes," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. And then, almost as if to himself, he added, "I just wish I could feel it again." They stood there in silence, both gazing at the ocean but worlds apart, the waves crashing softly against the shore, like the echoes of their once perfect life, slipping further and further away. The next morning, Lynn woke with a heaviness in her chest. Her dream from the night before lingered with her, a dream where she and Matt had been together again, laughing, as they once had. She blinked up at the ceiling, feeling the familiar ache, wondering when these feelings would stop haunting her. She got up, quietly dressed, and moved to the kitchen, where Beth was finishing breakfast and Jason was feeding the cat. Lynn's movements were automatic, her mind wandering to Matt and how distant everything now felt. "Mommy, can you take us to the park today?" Beth asked with hopeful eyes, her fork poised midair with a piece of pancake. Lynn smiled, trying to shake herself back to the present. "Of course, honey. As soon as I'm done cleaning up, we'll head out." While Beth and Jason played in the park, she sat on a bench, sipping her coffee, watching other families, their laughter, their playful banter, so simple, yet so full. She remembered how she and Matt had once brought their kids to this very park, laughing and pushing them on swings, sharing knowing looks over Beth and Jason's joyful squeals. The memories replayed in her mind, bittersweet reminders of what she had once held close, now lost. In the weeks that followed, Lynn tried her best to hold her head high, balancing work, managing the kids, and her personal turmoil. She visited her therapist, worked through exercises to process her feelings, but the emptiness lingered. She missed Matt terribly, though she had no right to. She missed their conversations, his quiet support, even the silences between them that had once felt comforting. She'd hoped, somehow, that her honesty and attempts to rebuild trust would have bridged the chasm, but it hadn't. Every Wednesday evening, when Matt came to pick up the kids, Lynn tried to engage him in small talk. But the warmth she once knew was absent, replaced by a polite but distant smile. She knew he was trying too, showing up with patience, listening to the kids' stories, and doing his part to make this transition smooth for them. But every goodbye felt like a reminder of the distance that had grown between them, a wound she couldn't heal. 6 months later, Lynn's life had settled into a routine, and she found herself taking the kids on outings more frequently. One Saturday afternoon, she was taking Jason and Beth to an indoor play area when she spotted Matt at a nearby table, sitting with a woman. She was a petite brunette, her smile warm, her hand lightly touching Matt's arm as they laughed over their coffees. Lynn froze, watching them for a moment until Beth's voice pulled her back. "Daddy," Beth called, waving excitedly. Matt's head shot up, his expression shifting from surprise to slight discomfort. The woman turned, flashing a kind smile at the kids, who rushed over to Matt. He hugged them, and they began chattering about the activities they'd been doing. Lynn walked up, smiling stiffly.
"Hi, Matt," she greeted, her voice barely holding steady. She glanced at the woman, who had shifted slightly, perhaps sensing the tension. "Lynn," Matt replied, his smile polite. "This is Angela," he said, introducing the woman beside him. "Angela, this is Lynn, my kid's mom." Angela extended her hand, her smile genuine. "Nice to meet you, Lynn," she said warmly. Lynn managed to shake her hand, though her heart was pounding. "Nice to meet you too," she replied, feeling a sense of surreal detachment. This was the new woman in Matt's life, the person who was there for him now, providing him with the warmth and love she'd taken for granted. "Are you two going to play today?" Angela asked, kneeling to Beth and Jason's level. They both nodded enthusiastically, Beth's eyes lighting up. Lynn managed to keep her composure, making small talk with Matt and Angela for a few minutes. She soon led the kids to the play area, her heart sinking with every step. She sat down at a table by the window, her mind reeling. She thought she'd prepared herself for this, seeing Matt move on, be happy again. But the reality felt like a punch in the gut, a vivid reminder of everything she'd lost. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus on her kids' laughter echoing through the play area, a small comfort in an otherwise aching moment. In the days that followed, Lynn wrestled with her emotions. She was happy for Matt, truly. He deserved to move forward, to have a second chance at happiness with someone who would treat him right. But she couldn't shake the feeling of regret that had grown like a stone in her chest. She tried to talk to Arlene about it, to voice her complex feelings, but even her friend could only offer so much support. "You just need to forgive yourself, Lynn," Arlene said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you have to live with this guilt forever. You've done what you can, and now it's time to move on too." Easier said than done, Lynn thought. But Arlene's words stuck with her. She needed to find closure, to accept that her chapter with Matt was over, and to begin focusing on her future and the lives she wanted to build with her children. Over the next year, Lynn dedicated herself to her job, her children, and rebuilding her own sense of self-worth. She attended more therapy sessions, learned to appreciate her own company, and found new hobbies, gardening, reading, and taking long hikes in the woods near her house. Little by little, she began to let go of the weight of the past, though the scars remained. One afternoon, after picking up Beth and Jason from Matt's, she was driving them home when Beth piped up from the back seat. "Mommy, why don't you have a friend like Daddy has Angela?"
Lynn's grip on the steering wheel tightened. She forced a smile, glancing back at Beth through the rearview mirror. "Because right now, sweetie, I'm just focused on being the best mommy I can be." Jason, ever the practical one, said, "But you can be a good mommy and still have a friend, right?" Lynn laughed, a genuine, heartfelt laugh that surprised even herself. "Yes, I suppose I can, Jason," she replied, feeling a new warmth blossom within her. Perhaps, she thought, it was time to consider that. But for now, she was content. Content to let things unfold naturally, knowing she'd done her best to mend the broken pieces within herself. Later that night, after tucking the kids into bed, she sat on her back porch, sipping tea and watching the stars. She breathed deeply, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The night air was cool, the stars brighter than she remembered, and for the first time in ages, she felt hope. The journey had been painful, the lessons hard. But in her solitude, she'd found something she hadn't expected: herself. The person she was now was stronger, wiser, someone who understood the value of loyalty, of love, and of forgiveness, both of others and of herself. As the night deepened, she whispered a quiet goodbye to the past, and with it, to the lingering ache she'd carried for so long. It was time to close that chapter, to face forward, and to build a life that her children could be proud of. A life filled with love, laughter, and new beginnings. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. See you next time.